Hello students, it's your history teacher with another online lecture. Today with the topic Black Death. Pretty accurate, right? The Black Death was one of the biggest pandemics of the history of humankind. Certainly the biggest in Middle Ages. Black Death, how was it called? Was a bubonic plague that was very infectious disease that killed millions of people in Europe and Asia in the 14th century. So 14th century was the year of the Black Death. What it has in common with coronavirus is the location where it broke out. It was in China as well, and it was spread all around Asia and to Europe by an oriental red flea from China, and through the Silk Road it reached the Europe. So we know that the Silk Road was going from China to Europe, so from the east to the west. It was a very important trade route. And so with the transporting of goods, also these red flea got to Europe. So rats were only transporters of this plague because in fact it originated in the flea that the rats had. Či bavíme sa o všiach, ktoré mali tie potkany. Boli prevezené vlastne na ich srsti z Číny až do Európy v tých rôznych karavánach, ktoré tam mierili z východu na západ, aby preniesli hodváb, ktorý bol prenašaný vlastne po tej hodvábnej ceste. Black Death caused probably between 30 and 60% of the population. Black Death caused that probably between 30 and 60% of the population died and had to be buried in massive graves because this disease was very infectious, so people could not be buried in a normal way, how we do it now, but usually this mass grave had to be somewhere in the surrounding of a city, so further from the houses and from the sources of water, because the water could be infected as well. Now I will tell you something about the symptoms of Black Death. It causes fever, fatigue, shivering, vomiting, headaches, giddiness, intolerance to light, pain in the back and limbs, sleeplessness, apathy, and delirium. And also it causes buboes. This is why it's called bubonic plague. This means that one or more of the lymph nodes and it becomes very tender and swollen, and usually in the groin or armpits. Also, what it's called Black Death is that the very final stage of this plague, just before you died or after your death, when it was still in your body, these buboes turned black. So it was like some of the parts of your body was already dead. This is why it was called Black Death. I hope you're not persons who will think that actually have disease like death. I don't want to cause any stress to you. I just want to tell you that there were pandemics in the world before, and since we have the topic of Middle Ages, this was really important event that was part of it. When you will look into the picture that is on the left, you can see the plague doctor, probably dead body, and other people who are covering their faces with the masks, so with scarves and anything they had. You've probably seen the plague doctor before. It's used to scare people. People also use it as like a Halloween costume. So this was the first costume for doctors that should protect them against the infection. So the mask that is similar to some kind of a bird and really long gown, which was meant to protect all of the body. So it should cover all of the body. After the Black Death stopped killing people in masses in Middle Ages, it did not stop to exist. Actually, it is still in the world, but we have a vaccination for that. But there are some parts of the world, mostly developing countries that are poor, that still have some percentage of that people that are caused by the Black Death. It was very easy to spread the disease during the Middle Ages because people were living really close to each other. Usually there were more families living in 1 or 2 rooms. There was really bad hygiene. People were, for example, throwing the leftovers from the kitchen to the street. Also, the canalization did not exist in the medieval city. So, as I mentioned during the topic of medieval city, these cities probably smelled very bad. And now, the very last thing are the consequences of the Black Death, because now, like from the time distance, okay, after many centuries, we can say that it also changed a lot of things in a positive way. For example, there was much more demand for the workers and peasants who survived, because there were more jobs and less people. They were able to get better wages and working conditions. This helped to improve their standard of living and also helped to give them more power over their lives. They also helped to spread the awareness about basic hygiene, and Black Death had also a significant impact on religion, as many believed that plague was God's punishment for sinful ways. Also now, there are some voices that are saying that maybe the corona crisis was sent to us as some kind of punishment. So also people in the Middle Ages believed in that, because you know that Middle Ages were really influenced by the religion. They were really strong believers. It significantly changed our society, okay? And after the 14th century, when people got over the Black Death, they started to live differently. Maybe we will also find other way to live our lives after this crisis will be over. Now, I will play you the video that is in the presentation. So there will be also things I mentioned, maybe something more. So now, let's watch it.
Plague is notorious for causing mass sickness and devastation. But as much tragedy as the disease has caused, it also helped drive crucial scientific and social progress. Plague is an infectious disease caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis. It mainly affects rodents and spreads by way of insects. Because of these insect carriers, plague has been passed on to humans with devastating consequences. 3 major plague pandemics have occurred in human history. And while they occurred centuries apart, they shared similar traits that paved the way for the spread of disease. One cause of plague pandemics was the rise of international trade. Trade routes connected once isolated communities and created large economic networks. But by facilitating the movement of goods between communities, trade routes also facilitated the movement of germs. International trade was an impetus for the first plague pandemic on record, the Plague of Justinian. In the 6th century, outbreaks began in Egypt, and thanks to land and sea trade routes, they spread throughout the Byzantine Empire. Named after the emperor at the time, the Plague of Justinian is estimated to have wiped out about half of Europe's population. Growing economies also made way for urbanization and a rising urban population. This resulted in crowded neighborhoods and the accumulation of waste, which created unsanitary living conditions. Cities and their residents essentially became incubators for germs and diseases. This was particularly evident in the second and most infamous plague pandemic. In the 14th century, Europe was experiencing an economic and population boom, especially in cities. Proper waste management did not exist at the time, making cities vulnerable to disease. After trade routes brought plague from Asia, where it killed millions in China and the Middle East, the disease wiped out about 1/3 of Europe's population, earning itself the moniker, the Black Death. What also aided in the transmission of the disease was the lack of medical knowledge. For most of human history, the cause of illnesses, germs, was unknown, making sicknesses like the plague a mystery. This lack of knowledge drove the spread of disease as recently as the 19th century. Outbreaks in northwest India eventually reached major port cities in China. In just over a century, plague was exported throughout the globe and caused outbreaks in every continent except Antarctica, making it the most widespread pandemic in history. This plague pandemic, however, was the last. In 1894, scientists discovered the bacteria behind the plague outbreaks. Their discovery helped further developments in microbiology, medicine, urban planning, and sanitation methods, which led to the treatment and prevention of the disease. Economic expansion, urbanization, and a lack of medical knowledge contributed to the disastrous spread of plague. In turn, however, the disease helped catapult crucial advancements in science and public health, very well making plague pandemics a thing of the past.
And to cheer you up after this topic, I have some pictures in the presentation. So the picture on the left is saying that life was really hard in the Middle Ages. So the 1349 AD was the 14th century, so Black Death or war. You had many ways how you could die. I love these memes from Middle Ages because these are real pictures in the medieval books or in medieval churches, and they're, just seem so funny and sometimes accurate for our situation as well. And the second picture is about chatting of free pandemics in a bar. So it's like a joke. Coronavirus, Spanish flu, and the Black Death are sitting in a bar and something happens. So coronavirus's vision is not to kill people, but to raise awareness around to access to public health. And we just don't get it. So with this, I want to tell you goodbye. I wanted to remind you to stay strong, stay healthy, to wear a mask, go to nature, wash your hands and everything. And I hope everything will be over soon. Bye.